The Alps are like a wall that divide Europe in two. This is one of the most rugged landscapes on Earth, so mapping them accurately in the 1800s felt impossible. But in 1832, that's exactly what Guillaume-Henri Dufour set out to do. His surveyors faced dangerous peaks with nothing more than chains, telescopes, and paper. This was a project they were risking their lives for. One of the surveyors fell to his death, and another was struck by lightning. But despite all the difficulty, by 1864, they had hand-drawn one of the most accurate maps in the world, completing the first map to cover all of modern Switzerland. Etched into 25 copper plates, its biggest errors were only 20 to 30 meters, no more than 1/4 of a millimeter on the plate itself. And with its unique, delicate shading style, it's also a work of art. For the first time, Switzerland was not just a collection of cantons, but a nation drawn onto a single map, a map that would usher it into the modern world. The city of Zurich sits on the north end of Lake Zurich. The snowmelt from the Alps provides not just clear, beautiful water for the lake, but also feeds the Limmat, a river that begins at Zurich and runs all the way to the North Sea. Historically, this has meant that whoever controlled the mouth of the river would have a powerful advantage. I wanted to learn more about this city, so this month my brother Drew and I packed up and went to Zurich. We made it. We flew overnight, and then we laid on the bed and we took a nap that took us to another dimension for about 2 hours.
Feeling good, vibe's good. Yeah, it's very pretty so far.
After taking a second to adjust to the time change, we started exploring.
Did you get it?
Did you get the picture?
I got the pic.
Oh, that's perfect, dude.
We learned that you can go on a bit of a treasure hunt, and you can go to City Hall and get a key, which apparently will unlock some doors so you can look at some archaeological sites. So that's exactly what we're going to do.
These walls are pretty crooked.
Okay, so we have retrieved the key from City Hall, and we also received basically a treasure map. And this is pretty vague. I don't even know what we're looking for exactly, if it's like a door. But we have a hunt to do. So let's go. At the heart of Zurich is a hill called Lindenhof. It's the highest point in the old city, and also the most open space within it. Today it's home to a quiet park shaded by trees with a view across the river and rooftops. It might seem like an unassuming part of the city, but it's actually where it began, and it was our first stop. A bit of a hike up here. Except we didn't really know what we were looking for.
I imagine like a door in the ground.
Our tour guide yesterday pointed at that door, I think. It doesn't fit that door. And this is a fob reader, so.
Oh, what?
No.
This is so much cooler than I anticipated. What?
Whoa.
So I'm currently climbing over the old Roman wall, one of the earliest structures in all of Zurich. So the river, this is going to be the river. This is the hill where all the trees are. We walked up right here and then entered right here. Walked over, now we're somewhere here-ish. This wall we're looking at was the first structure ever built in Zurich. The Romans built it nearly 2,000 years ago, naming the settlement Turicum. And it stayed buried until the 1930s, when archaeologists dug it back up. Even after the fall of the Roman Empire, the settlement of Turicum continued to grow.
Well, that was all significantly cooler than I expected.
Yeah. All right, on to the next one, huh?
By the Middle Ages, Zurich had turned into a true city. Turicum had evolved into the German word Zurich and had reached down from the Lindenhof, first along the west bank of the Limmat, then across the river to the east. Like the rest of Switzerland at the time, Zurich was just one self-governing canton in a loose confederation. This is part of the reason why some areas in Switzerland now speak German and others speak Italian or French. But at the time, this meant that with no king and no empire, Zurich was really on its own to defend itself. And this is what led Drew and I right here to our second stop.
Maybe it's down there?
If we could just find it.
Oh. Oh.
For this stop, the key unlocked a door which led us to a room with a section of the medieval wall that used to surround the city. This wall was built around 1250 and surrounded the city on both sides of the Limmat. On the western side, they rerouted water from the lake to serve as a moat in addition to the wall. But on the eastern side, the elevation is generally higher, so they couldn't use water and would have to come up with another solution. And so instead they built a big dry moat that's like 20 meters wide. And we're essentially standing in that old moat right now. And now in the basement of this building, two guys are just looking at it. But it shaped the city, and it's still visible in the map. So we were just in the basement of this building right here. And now we're on the opposite side. So this would have been the exterior of the city wall. And this road, where all this noise is coming from, this road is an elevated version of that old dry ditch.
Now it's really clear to see that, like, on this side of that street, we're in the old medieval city. So the city character is just so different. Was expanded and built, like, much later. The architecture and city planning is just very different. Like that, it's much more suburban on that side.
We have gotten in touch with someone here at the Central Zurich Library in the Maps and Panorama department, and they have prepared some historic maps for us to come look at.
Just a quick break here, just taking over before we go in here. Like and subscribe.
If you're enjoying this stuff, please like and subscribe.
Leave a like and a subscribe.
Okay, now let's look at some maps. Laura and Stefan showed us a bunch of cool maps and helped us understand the development of the city, but they also pointed us to something really cool I think you're gonna love. Switzerland is particularly good at providing map data from their government. It's like really modern and sleek, and one of the things they've done is this thing called 4D Zurich. This is essentially like Google Maps for Zurich through time. So we can go back to the year 200 and see what it was like with just the Roman settlement, and we can see it in the year 1500, when its border was the wall that Drew and I were just looking at. I've put the link in the description, and I highly recommend you go check it out. Guys, I have to admit something very embarrassing, which is that I fell for a phishing scam recently, and I gave my credit card information to a scammer. I feel like I'm someone who's online a lot. I feel like I'm aware of things, and I'm trying to not fall for that. But if they catch you at the right moment when you're not paying attention, they can get you. Thankfully, I changed my credit card and stuff before they could do anything with it. But this is exactly the reason I use today's sponsor, NordVPN, everywhere I go. I've been using NordVPN for a long time. Every time I travel and connect to Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or an airport, I know in the back of my mind, and I think about it every time, that NordVPN is protecting me. This isn't a lie. Look how much I use this. NordVPN will make your online experience more secure and more private. With their threat protection, you can actually have the added benefit of being protected against malware, and you can set this up so that it's protecting you from malware even when your VPN isn't turned on. Another thing I use it for all the time is watching shows on streaming services that are available only in specific countries. So I can use NordVPN to watch those shows wherever I am. If you go to the link at the top of my description, nordvpn.com/Daniel Steiner, you can get an exclusive deal plus 4 months extra. Thank you so much to NordVPN for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to the map of Zurich. Even though the city was surrounded by one wall, it was almost more like two communities facing each other. In fact, the western portion of the city was often referred to as Little Zurich, and the main spine of the old town now ran through its eastern half. Niederdorfstrasse was lined with markets, something still visible in the names of the streets around it. We're just walking down this road that used to be the medieval main axis of the city. Just like it's nothing. Living in the medieval era would be so difficult. This city had a third of its population killed by the plague, which is actually less, I think, than a lot of other cities. This divided medieval city is actually still kind of apparent in the placement of these two churches. Fraumünster and Großmünster served as their respective sides' center of power, and the first bridge to cross the Limmat went directly from one to the other. These churches were much more than just religious institutions. They were major landholders and political authorities. Each of these churches had different civic duties and made this city a very unique place for a religious reformation to happen. In 1523, a preacher from Großmünster called for dramatic religious reform. The city council took a vote, and they ended up siding with this preacher. Overnight, Zurich was different. Catholic Mass was banned, and now the city was Protestant. And this had a couple really interesting effects. This made the city more secular, but it also made it more religiously exclusive, banning anything that wasn't Protestant, and even kicking out the Jewish community that had been living there. Another effect was the redistribution of land and wealth, since now the church's wealth was being funneled into civic offices. For example, this monastery was turned into a printing press. And on the western side of the city, a clock was installed on the tower at St. Peter's Church, making it the first clock tower in the city. This was a symbol that time was not going to be kept by the bells of the clergy anymore. It was going to be kept in hours and minutes by the public. Fun fact, by the way, the clock face has been upgraded several times and is now the largest in all of Europe. Drew said he thinks that the clock tower looks not as big as it is because it's so big, so it looks closer, which makes it look smaller. Could be onto something. And one other effect that the Reformation had is that it actually put Zurich at odds with a lot of the other cities in the Confederation, which would lead to a lot of wars down the line. Speaking of conflict, when it comes to cannons, there's a clear before and after moment. Around 1500, technical advancements in cannons changed everything. There was more powerful gunpowder, and rather than using stone, they could now cast cannonballs out of iron. Heavier, denser, and far more destructive, they made medieval walls that had stood for centuries suddenly obsolete. In response, cities like Florence built low, thick ramparts and angled walls that could withstand attack and return fire from any direction. This design quickly spread throughout Europe, including to Zurich. In 1624, the construction of a new city wall began, a ring fortification that pushed the boundary outward and redrew the map, expanding it by nearly double its medieval footprint. Even though it was much bigger and more technically advanced, it would still follow the same pattern of the old wall in the sense that on the eastern side of the city, they would have to use mounds of earth, and on the western side of the city, they would reroute the water to use as a moat, which is still visible. So we've come to the other side of the city on a little bit of a mission to find the outer moat, and it looks like we just found it. Drew and I took a moment to put our feet in the water and take it in. And this area along the entire moat is honestly so beautiful. And it's cool how clearly you can still see the shape of the old wall. Drew and I actually came across a model of the city from this era, which I could look at for quite a while. This remained the extent of the city for a long time, until someone would come along and not only reshape Zurich, but all of Switzerland. One of the first things you might think about when you think about Switzerland is its railroads. In 1847, the city's train station, Zurich HB, opened. This shifted the city's center of gravity, and it's not just the busiest train station in Switzerland, it's one of the busiest in all of Europe. The number of passengers going through this station every day is larger than the entire population of Zurich. The rail lines that began here opened Zurich to the world. Just as gunpowder and cast iron had reshaped the city, now railroads were doing the same. Even though it's not why it was made, the incredible detail and accuracy of the Dufour map made it much easier for engineers to select routes. Don't you think it's so cool? While this map helped, it would take someone just as driven and determined as Dufour to get it physically built. Switzerland was much smaller and more fragmented by language and culture than Germany, France, and Italy. This meant that in addition to overcoming the terrain, they also had less manpower and less money than their neighbors. Alfred Escher, a politician and entrepreneur in the 1840s, saw solutions to each of these issues. To overcome the problem of manpower, Escher helped found the ETH in 1855, a university aimed at training engineers for the railway age. It sits on what was the city wall and overlooks the city. And, interestingly, this later would become a very important place in Albert Einstein's life, and we actually stopped in there and saw his locker. Then, to solve the issue of funding, Escher established a bank, which would finance the building of the railroads. This would become Credit Suisse. Railroads and banking are like the two first things that come to my mind when I think about Switzerland, and it's crazy that Alfred Escher was kind of responsible for starting both of them here. But most technically impressive was the Gotthard Tunnel. Running more than 10 miles long underneath the Alps, the Gotthard Tunnel opened in 1882 as the longest tunnel in the world. For the first time, railroads had conquered the Alps, and Switzerland had a direct north-south railway linking Zurich with Milan and the Mediterranean. The effect was dramatic, and Zurich HB quickly became the busiest hub in the country. Escher's creation of a new Zurich also meant the destruction of the old one. Walls and gates that had long served the city were now torn down. Most notably was Bahnhofstrasse, the boulevard leading to the train station. This road follows the route of Zurich's first defensive moat, and the city's largest gate was dismantled and used to fill it. After Alfred Escher, Zurich was no longer a walled city. It was a financial hub and a crossroads of Europe. The Gotthard Tunnel isn't the longest tunnel in the world anymore. That title now belongs to the Gotthard Base Tunnel, which is essentially directly beneath it, and runs over 35 miles long underneath the Alps, which is extremely impressive to me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me a ton. Link for today's sponsor, NordVPN, is at the top of the description. And if you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, that is below there, also in the description. I'll see you guys in another video super soon. Peace.